Coming up on Network Africa, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi warns against what he calls attempts to destabilize the state ahead of planned anti-government protests. The International Criminal Court launches an investigation into the unrest in Burundi. And tributes pour in for Congolese musician Papa Wemba, who died at the age of 66 after collapsing on stage on Sunday morning. This is Network Africa. Hello and welcome to Network Africa. I am Adeshewa Josh. We begin today's program with a summary of major events that occurred in Africa over the weekend. Take a look.
Congolese music legend Papa Wemba died after collapsing on stage in Ivory Coast in the early hours of Sunday morning. Wemba, born in 1949, was performing at the FEMWA 2016 festival when he slumped. Videos posted online showed the artist falling on his back mid-song before band members rushed to his side. Still in Congo, President Denis Sassou Nguesso named former Finance Minister Clement Mwamba as Prime Minister, bringing a one-time opposition leader into the government. The appointment comes a month after Sassou Nguesso was elected to a 5-year term, which extends his long rule over the oil-producing country. Sassou Nguesso led Congo between 1979 and 1992 and returned to power after a civil war in 1997. Elsewhere, 2 migrants rescued at sea watched the boat full of migrants sink in the Mediterranean Sea in the middle of the night. Up to 500 migrants are thought to have drowned last week when human traffickers crammed people into an already overcrowded ship. Muaz Mahmoud from Ethiopia and Maulid Isman from Somalia told a news conference hosted by the UNHCR in Athens, Greece, that they had jumped from a sinking ship where they both lost family members, which they believed had several hundred people on board.
We can see some people were swimming to another boat. It was 2 boats. When they were falling that boat, we swimming to save our life, another boat. Then some Somalian in that boat, then they throw something for us. 10 people, they just 10 people, they swimming, they take us from the water, they save our life, and then I saved 2% from the water. I saved his life 2%.
The UNHCR said 37 men, 3 women and a 3-year-old child had survived the disaster after being rescued by the merchant ship. The group included Somalis, Ethiopians, Egyptians and 1 Sudanese. They had set sail from Libya last week, heading for Italy.
The International Criminal Court has begun preliminary examination into the unrest in Burundi, which began when President Pierre Nkurunziza decided to run for a 3rd term. ICC Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda says her office has reviewed a number of communications and reports detailing acts of killing, imprisonment, torture, rape and other forms of sexual violence, as well as cases of enforced disappearances. She added that all the acts appear to fall within the jurisdiction of the ICC. Meanwhile, an army general and his wife have been killed in an attack in Burundi's capital, Bujumbura, as they were dropping off their daughter at school. The Defense Ministry confirmed the killing of General Athanase Karabuza and his wife. The general is the latest string of army officers to be killed in Bujumbura since President Pierre Nkurunziza survived a coup and mass protest over his decision last April to extend his decade-long rule. Ahead of planned anti-government protests, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has urged citizens to defend the state and its institutions. In a televised speech, Mr. Sisi says attempts to destabilize Egypt will not succeed if the country stands united. Security has also been heightened all over the country, with officials warning they will deal firmly with protesters. Public anger has worsened following a recent deal to cede sovereignty over two Red Sea islands to Saudi Arabia. But Mr. Sisi has defended his decision, saying the islands of Sanafir and Tiran has always belonged to Saudi Arabia. Well, secular and leftist activists called for the demonstrations today in defiance of an anti-protest law that bans unauthorized gatherings. Let's get the latest on the story from Cairo. VOA's Edward Garanian joins me now to tell us more. Thank you for joining us on Network Africa.
My pleasure.
I know there's been back and forth on this protest. What is the latest?
Well, Arab media has been suggesting that there were a few minor demonstrations so far. Al Jazeera TV, the Arabic network, was claiming that there were protests this morning in Alexandria, but they were showing video that didn't look like it coincided with the weather conditions, so I'm not sure that was from this morning, really. Also, some Twitter reports, unconfirmed, about the police firing tear gas, but not from sources I would consider reliable. And someone came out with a picture of what looked like a demonstration somewhere in Giza. It's possible. I think that the government has pretty much locked up some of the key gathering points, and I'm not entirely sure that the outrage that has been billed about the two islands is really that strong. So I don't think it's resonating with the public as much as some of the people in the media would like to think.
Okay, so let's talk more about these islands. According to President Sisi, these islands have always belonged to Saudi Arabia, of course controlled by Egypt. However, that played out over the years. Tell us more about these islands.
Well, they're right off the coast of Sharm el-Sheikh, which is a key tourist attraction, an area where people do a lot of diving. The islands are popular with some divers, and some Egyptians have claimed that there is oil in that area. It's possible because across the Red Sea in the other direction near Garda'a, there are some oil sites that have been producing a little bit for years. It's possible. As far as the actual ownership of the islands, I guess it's debatable. It depends on which historical period you would like to take. And that kind of issue normally gets resolved in an international court, especially if there's oil there and the two parties are disputing the ownership of it, which hasn't yet occurred. So I guess we really can't say conclusively one way or the other.
Edward, you know, what is the question right now? I guess what most of these people are asking is how easy it was for President Sisi to just cede the islands without, like you mentioned, such issues are being settled in a court to say, okay, you own it, you don't own it. But President Sisi appears not to be struggling over these islands. He's just ceding over to Saudi Arabia.
Yes, there is a bit of irritation on the part of many people, including the intellectuals who support the government, about that, while at the same time, many people have argued fairly cogently that Saudi Arabia is one of the mainstays supporting Egypt's economy, and if the economy collapses, that's going to hurt everybody, and it's much more important than the ownership of those two islands. And in any case, Egypt and Saudi Arabia have been cooperating militarily quite closely, especially over Yemen, and the Egyptians have actually helped to liberate several islands that the Arab media was worrying about falling under Iranian control, farther down the Red Sea and the area where ships transit. So I think those are more worrisome than these two islands, to be honest with you.
Right. So local and international human rights activists are saying that Egypt has reverted back to, in quote, a police state. What do you make of this statement, Edward?
Well, to a certain extent, I mean, given the fact that you have people who are out there placing bombs in the streets and targeting police and other government targets, I guess it's normal. You might expect that if you think the government should regain control of the streets. Human rights groups are trying to support a reversion to the old government of Mr. Morsi. I'm not sure why, but that's what they seem to be supporting. I don't see any enthusiasm here in Egypt for that, even if President Sisi's popularity may have gone down somewhat. So I don't know why they're supporting that. And it looks like there are a lot of academics and journalists out there who are not in the country who seem to be rooting for a revolution, another revolution, and that would just merely set the country back another 10 years.
Edward Geranian, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on these issues. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Let's take a break on Network Africa. When we come back, World Health Organization says malaria could be wiped out from 6 African states by the year 2020. We have details for you in just a moment. Do stay with us.